There. Thanks so much, Ed. Well, the government's economic and productivity roundtable continues in Parliament House, Canberra today. There are no cameras allowed. There's no recording of the proceedings. The participants are not even allowed to have their mobile phones. Open government, hey? So the National Senator, M.Canavan, who before Parliament worked for the Productivity Commission, decided to set up his own roundtable, a real roundtable, he called it, which was broadcast on Sky News today. And many were waiting to hear from Canavan's old boss, Gary Banks, the former chairman of the Productivity Commission, who laid bare the reasons for Australia's economic regression.
And so what we're observing is firms that can't compete anymore because their costs have gone up, either because of energy or because of industrial relations arrangements that make it hard for them to do what they need to do. So once you're in that dilemma, I mean, we're in a situation where we're trying to lift our economy up by the bootstraps with lead in the saddlebags, if I can cross all my metaphors.
Senator M.Canavan, who organised all that, joins me now. Matt, thanks for that. Did you get anything concrete out of this that government could and should do right away to improve Australia's productivity?
Yeah, look, I think we did. In general terms, the simple message, I think, was that if we want the Australian economy to be bigger, we need the Australian government to be smaller. There is too much involvement from Canberra in the lives of businesses, the lives of ordinary Australians, in our energy markets, and that's causing these issues. There were a number of key takeaways there that we discussed this morning. I think we've got to limit government spending. There was a target of reducing it by 4%. As I said in the room, we actually have increased annual government spending by $300 billion a year since COVID. So the budget before COVID was $477 billion a year. Today, this year, right now where we sit, we're going to spend $788 billion a year.
So
that
in other
4%,
words, all those people who are employed, paying all that tax, more than 50% of the government's revenue comes from PAYG taxpayers.
Yeah.
So all of that money that's come in, what you're saying has not produced productive outcomes for the Australian economy.
Well, I think that's for the Australian people to judge. Judge it yourself. That extra $300 billion a year, that amounts to $30,000 per household, or about 10 million households in Australia. So about you're paying, or your government is spending on your behalf, which you'll have to pay back, $30,000 extra a year. Do we think we're getting $30,000 a year extra in value in better government services? Absolutely not. So that target that David Pearl suggested of reducing the size of government by 4% of GDP, that would mean slashing about $100 billion off government spending. Well, I think that's achievable because we've increased it by $300 billion. Yes. We've gone like here in 7 years. We ended JobKeeper, we ended all this stuff that we had to do during COVID, but we stayed up there. Maybe we should just come a little bit back.
Well, let's have a listen to what David Pearl had to say, who used to work for Treasury. Here's a little bit of him.
The truth is that we have deliberately chosen the economic purgatory we inhabit. I want to say that again. We've deliberately chosen it. It's not an act of God. It's not an accident. It's not due to the 24-hour media cycle and gutless politicians. We chose it as a society. Back then, the rallying cry was protection for all, justifying an economy-wide network of tariffs, quotas, subsidies and price rigging. Today, we impose those very same policies under the banner of net zero.
So David Pearl is talking to the old days of when we had tariffs and high barriers and compared that to today, where he believes that many of those barriers are now coming on.
Yeah.
It strikes me also that, like, if we had an election next weekend, it's odds on the Labor Party would win and win probably pretty comprehensively. So the reality is for the ordinary person, for a business person, to try and get this message through that the economy is going to struggle in the future under the current weight. That's a difficult message to have to try and sell, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm thankful the election's not on next week, Ross, because you're probably right. But that's our job now over the next few years to make this case. And I also think my job as an Australian senator is to try and highlight these challenges and confront them before the train wreck occurs. Because I do think our economy is hurtling down the pathway here where it could look fine for a while and then suddenly it's off a cliff.
Okay,
and so we're facing this week, you've seen 3,000 jobs lost at CSL.
Yep.
We see the rise of AI. We see earnings fall for BHP, Woodside. There is a certain drumbeat here that things aren't going that well. And we'd be much better off fixing those issues while unemployment's still got a 4 in front of it and our economic growth is still positive, rather than in a year's time, if we're sitting here worried about people losing their jobs, the government in more debt, what do we do then? That's
do you
much
think
harder.
that's the inevitability of what happens if we continue down this path?
Well,
because what you can see is government getting bigger and more people now rely on government or government policy for their jobs. They're almost beholden to the government to stay in power.
Well, look, it's probably not as certain as you having to pay taxes in the next year, but it's not far behind. That if we continue to have this stagnant productivity performance, in the last few years it's fallen off a cliff, if that continues, we're going to suffer a major economic shock of some kind. We're going to have a reckoning. There'll be an economic reckoning of all the debt that's been built up over the last 20 years, both public and private, that can no longer be serviced if we don't have a strong growing economy. We've been able to borrow a lot of money as a country. We have large current account deficits normally. We're able to borrow that because we've got a high growth economy and we can pay that back and people will lend us that money.
But we don't have a high growth
But
economy
not right now. Last few years we haven't had that high growth. So if that continues, there's only so long it can continue before it ends.
OK, so then another way of trying to explain this to people and to business, whatever, is would it be easy to actually explain it using the word competitiveness rather than productivity?
Yeah,
because Australia right now, quite clearly, and we're seeing this from companies basically leaving Australia, is losing competitiveness.
Yeah, I think you're right. Look, a lot of people don't quite get the jargon of productivity. It does just mean how much we produce. But yeah, look, with the competitiveness angle is probably one that's going to be in the spotlight more as we lose industries and jobs. We've already lost the nickel industry last year, like the refining and smelting of nickel gone to Indonesia. We're now on the cusp of losing copper, of aluminium, of lead and zinc, steel, all look like going offshore. And so at some point, I do think the Australian people will wake up to the fact that we're losing industries, we're losing jobs, and maybe it's best to make decisions in the favour of...
It must be pretty sobering to see the chief executive of Rio Tinto and BHP in the Oval Office with Donald Trump today. That's got to be sobering.
Yeah. Well, when you look at what Mark Vassala said on your show the other day, energy costs here in Australia are 3 to 4 times what he's paying in the US. He runs the same type of businesses there. That gap in competitiveness, we're going to suffer from. Investment will go to the US.
I've got to leave it, Matt. Many thanks for your time. M.Canavan, Senator M.Canavan. Well, after the break, the universal key, as we're saying, for an improved economy.